Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Codiak, and today we are talking about the 7.2 class mounts. Now, we're not just talking about them, we're actually going to rank them. And full disclosure, this is just my opinion. I surveyed the guild to see where we kind of wanted to stack all of them up, which ones we like the most, which ones we like the least. And yeah, we just kind of put them in a basic order, 1 through 12 here, of what we think are the coolest ones and which ones we think definitely they kind of copped out on. And now Blizzard's art team really took a new direction with Legion. A lot of the spell animations that we had been so used to seeing got a fresh revamp, which has been really great. A lot of the artwork has been absolutely phenomenal, especially in the Nighthold. Between boss mechanics and boss art, it's really been top notch. But how do the class mounts stack up? Now, everybody's very excited for the class mounts, so let's just dive right in. Number one favorite class mount, hands down, is the Shaman mount. This thing is such a badass. They did a great job capturing the element of the Shaman, capturing kind of the badassness with the element primal nature, and it just looks absolutely phenomenal. Now, the one caveat I have about the Shaman mount, and it's a very, very small one, is the lack of color variation. Now, again, it's so badass that it doesn't actually need that variation. You could have easily changed the gems or the eyes of the mount here, but it does everything it needs to do on its own. It speaks for itself, and it's just absolutely one of the coolest mounts I've seen in the game. And the reason why this one also works really well is because it can fly, it can be on the ground, and I'll believe it. I'll believe it both ways. Now just remember, all of these class mounts are flying mounts, so kind of consider that when we talk about the next 11 mounts here. Number two, Monk. Some people love it, some people hate it. I think a lot of us personally like this mount. It's a badass, it's got this great monk feel to it, and it just looks cool. Now, I know it's a tiger, and we've seen tigers before, but the artwork plus the intricacy of kind of the armor and the little baubles and the little trinkets that are hanging off the back of the mount, plus just the colors that they use. They really make this mount pop off the screen. It is one of the cooler mounts that I think they're implementing in 7.2. My one catch with this one, some people think it's a little over the top. I'm not quite there. I probably could have done without the headpiece on the mount itself, but it is a very cool mount. They did a great job with it. The flying animation is decent. It's okay. It's hover animation, also a little questionable, but overall the mount looks great. They did a fantastic job making this one pop off the screen. All right, my number three is the Hunter mount. Look, this may be the first controversial one because the Hunter mount, I am just partial to it. I play a Hunter, but you got to remember, the Hunter comes from nature. It comes from that place of primalness, and I think that's what they captured in this Hunter mount. Because they could have gone with any slew of beast or bird, and they went with this kind of cool wolf-bird hybrid looking thing. And it looks feral. It looks badass. You've got the spikes, you've got the rustic colors, you've got the browns and the greens and the auburns, and it just looks really Hunter-esque. And that's partially the reason why it's ranked so high. But I think it looks great because I believe it as a flying mount. I also believe it as a ground mount, and it's just got this leanness to it, this primal Hunter energy that I totally believe I could see any Hunter riding that thing with its bow in hand. I think it looks absolutely badass, and I'm really, really excited to get mine in 7.2. All right, the next one, guys, number four, is the Rogue class mount. And I think the Rogue class mount, it's cool. It captures kind of that sneakiness. When I think of sneakiness in a rogue, I do think of the Raven. I think the Raven has always been this omen of, what's to come, and this dark sign. And that's kind of how I view rogues. Even rogues I've played with for years, they always seem to be these kind of quiet guys, but deadly in a raid environment. And that's kind of what they captured with the Raven Rogue class mount. Now, I will say one of the catches with this one is that I could never see the Raven walking on the ground. It does not work as a ground mount. I just don't buy it quite so much. And I also don't really like the red and green variations of this mount, but I do like the overall design. I think they did do a great job with the overall design of the mount. The particle effects in the back, kind of the smokiness look to it, looks really great. And I think a rogue and all of its leather gear, especially some of the better transmog rogues I've seen out out there are going to look really cool on top of that Raven. And that little cap, I mean, the thing's got this cool cap on. It just kind of completes the whole image, makes me really feel like that's what a rogue should be flying on. It's a great mount, really excited for that one. All right, number 5, the Priest mount. Now the Priest mount, it's up there because it does look good. It's got some great design characteristics, specifically the middle where the player sits and the kind of the back ornamentation of the mount. My one catch with this mount is the face. Obviously they went with this like owl sort of thing. It obviously can fly, it obviously can run on the ground, you believe it and all of that good stuff. But the owl face was the one thing that threw me on this mount, especially if you're looking at the different variations. Now, especially because we're talking about this purple Shadow Priest variation. They could have easily gone in a different direction with the design of the mount to make you really believe it, but it almost goes towards the cartooniness of it, and that's where it starts to fall apart for me. So I do think the mount is cool. The whole chair area where the player sits is really well designed. The colors is what really throws me off. Kind of the design of the face and the colors are starting to, they make me question kind of the design, especially with the oversized paws of the mount itself. But it does look good running. It looks decent while it's flying. It's not a bad mount, kind of middle of the pack in my opinion. Alright, our number 6 mount is the Warlock mount. Guys, you may have your own opinions about this one, but this is kind of tried and true Warlock. It's the reason why it's in the middle of the pack, because they did do a good job designing it. It's another horse, it's another skeletal horse. They did do a decent job designing it. I think it's kind of what you would expect from a Warlock mount. I think the green one looks particularly cool, especially if you have a transmog that matches it. The color schemes of like dark browns and greens, vivid greens, and a little bit of purple and grays really make that mount feel necrotic, feel warlocky, if you will. And that's part of the reason why I like it. We've seen that mount before, something similar to that, and they did do a pretty good job kind of redesigning it, reworking it to pop off the screen, especially with some of those vivid colors by the hoofs. That's really where you see the pop off the screen. So that's kind of why it's in the middle of the pack. Let you guys make your own opinions about that one. Alright, number 7 is the Mage mount. And again, a middle of the pack one. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's kind of what I would expect for a mage. I'm glad they didn't go with something stupid like a nether something or other that just didn't feel right. Like we seen them do it really well with the Shaman. I just don't know what they would have done with the Mage to make it to pull it off. But the flying discs is really cool. They have the 3 variations, the arcane, the fire, and the frost. I think it looks really, really cool when they're flying on it, kind of like they're surfing. But again, it's a simple design, it's a simple idea. Some of the intricacies of it are really cool. The ornamentation on the flat side of the disc where the player would stand. But it's a basic concept, and they could have gone a million different directions. They chose one that was good, that was safe, and I'm okay with it. But like I said, middle of the pack. Alright, number 8, guys. This is the Death Knight mount. And the Death Knight mount, it's not bad. It's okay. It's kind of what we'd expect from the Warlock mount on the Death Knight. The Frost variation is definitely my favorite version of it. I think a Frost DK sitting on top of that thing is going to look absolutely badass. The other two don't quite work for me just because of the way that they chose their colors. The fire, or the blood one I should say, used a little bit too much yellow in my opinion, kind of the heart area where the heart should be. They could have gone darker with it, could have gone a little bit more black. They decided to go with tans and yellows, and it just kind of makes it feel less menacing, less Death Knighty. They obviously stuck with the like skeletal theme that we know with the Death Knights. It's so popular and prominent, and look, the Unholy One's just as good. I don't mind it. You definitely get that sense of like necroticness and plaguiness, but a couple of the design things I really don't like. The face mask thing that covers where the eyes would be looks a little comical, looks a little, I don't know, it doesn't have that same pop that the cap on the Raven has. It almost looks like you're trying to blind it, but there's nothing cool going on with it, and it just feels a little weak. I feel like this needs to be a little bit beefier, a little bit bulkier. It's designed very long as opposed to very thick, and that's kind of what I think of when I think of Death Knights. I think of big, beefy, death friggin' monsters, and that's what I was hoping to see from the Death Knight class mount, and that's why it's ranked a little bit lower at number 8. Alright, number 9, guys, is the Demon Hunter mount, and in Demon Sang's opinion, this one should be at the bottom of the list. I kind of agree with him, but I don't agree with him. They tried something. They tried something different. I'll give them that. I'll give them credit for it, but I don't know what's going on with this mount. You've got armor, you've got blades, you've got bones, you've got wings and battiness, and you've got fell energy. It just doesn't make sense. It almost seemed like they kind of threw everything into the pot, mixed it up, and this is what you got out of it. It's kind of a monstrosity in terms of design. There's a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more minion-y with the way that it's kind of hunched over, and I think it'll fly all right, but I just don't buy it. I think there was a lot of design elements that look a little forced. I don't think Demon Hunters will look very good riding on top of it, and I think they could have done away with this. They could have gone a million different directions with the Demon Hunter. They decided to go with kind of the Demon Minion approach. It's not bad, but it's definitely not good. It is lower on the list at number 9, so have your own opinions. There is no variation to that mount that I've seen that I like. It's a little forced. It's a little much in my opinion. But hey, maybe you do like that one, and I won't hold that against you, I promise. All right, we're at number 10 now. Last 3 here. Number 10 is the Druid, and yeah, the Druid travel form. I mean, okay, I get it. I suppose. It's okay. The design is cool. I mean, there's only so much you can do with such a small canvas. They did some cool stuff with the particle effects around the wings, and the colors look really great, in my opinion. I think they did a good job trying to find colors that worked for the Druid that didn't look recycled. They went with the whites and the purples and shades of that for one of the mounts. They went with kind of the rustic browns and steels and purple in one of the variations, which looks really, really cool. And then the other two are all right. They kind of went with a red theme and then a blue theme. It's okay. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing to write home about, and I think that's kind of why it's so low on the list. There was only so many directions they could have gone with this. Obviously, they wanted to stick in the travel form mode because they didn't want to make anything inconvenient for the Druid or take them out of kind of their class fantasy. So they were limited, and that's why it's so low on the list. And even with the limitations, they didn't really do anything to push themselves outside of that comfort zone. So that's why it's at number 10 there on the list. All right, number 11. Ugh, what were they thinking? Warrior mount. Absolutely garbage. I mean, I asked for big and beefy on the Death Knight, and I got big and beefy and stupid on the Warrior. And it's just my personal opinion. I think we've seen this model before. This is the old, very close to the Proto Drake mount model that we've seen in some of the previous expansions, and they really didn't do anything fancy with it. They kind of gave it a generic color scheme with the red and tans, and they gave it a ton of armor. I mean, this is classic mount stuff, but the unfortunate bit is that the Proto Drake model with kind of the slunken neck just doesn't look good in this environment. It kind of makes it look like this weird ground mount that has wings. It's beefy, but it's bulky. It doesn't look cool. It doesn't pop off the screen. I don't think anybody will look twice at it. And that's really why it's so low on the list. I think it's a simple design that really wasn't executed that well. I don't think any warriors really like it. And that's my opinions on that. And then that's it. Last but not least, we've got number 12. We've got the Paladin mount. This is just, what is this? I mean, we've got another holy horse, and the design is cartoony. The design is just, I don't get it. They tried to make it more badass than it was, but let's be honest, guys, there's only so many directions you can take a horse model. And they went with some really interesting color themes that most paladins don't rock it, right? They have the very classic gold and white, and that you will see a lot of paladins using kind of like the old Lawbringer stuff, but a lot of paladins like the Judgment set, right? They like a lot of the older sets. Now we know that gold and white is a very popular theme for paladins, but you have 3 variations in here that don't work well with those transmogs. You have kind of a white and yellow and purple theme. You have a tannish steel and purple theme, and then you have a steel, a red, and a blue theme. It doesn't make any sense. It's clearly a ground mount. The flying animation, I don't believe it. It doesn't look like it should fly. I just don't, and just don't even get me started on the hammer laying on the back. Like, oh, I'm just gonna put this hammer on the back of the mount. It was like somebody's son drew the mount and was like, "Daddy, look, this would be really cool," and it just doesn't. It doesn't come off the screen as cool. It comes off the screen as hokey. It comes off the screen as cartoonish, and we could say that about some of the other mounts. You know, the monk mount you could argue that it looks cartoonish. I think you could argue that maybe the face and some of the elements of the priest mount look cartoonish, but compare it to something like the hunter mount, where the hunter mount really feels like it's part of the game and feral, and it really belongs there. You have the paladin mount, which doesn't feel like it belongs. It looks a little bit too much. It looks a little unbelievable, and not in a good way. So that's why it's ranked last on my list for the 7.2 patch. Class mounts, just my opinion. But I am interested to see what you guys think. You don't have to go 1 through 12 like I did, but I would love to hear what you guys think are the best mounts and the worst mounts of 7.2. Give me some reasons. I love talking about this stuff. I love getting into it and seeing why you guys think this looks good or why this doesn't look good. Leave us a comment below. Let us know all of your thoughts. If you think my list is absolutely whack and I'm completely off base, you can let me know that too. I don't care. I can take it. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think about the 7.2 class mounts. And yeah, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Please feel free to like and subscribe. We've got plenty of more content coming in the next couple of months for you guys. But for now, my name is Codiak, raid leader for Exiled Power, and we will see you next time.